Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all keeping well and welcome to the latest episode of our series looking at different areas of the criminal litigation system in England and Wales. And today we're looking at criminal confessions. One of my new subscribers wrote to me and mentioned they'd seen a news article about a gentleman who was imprisoned for over 38 years wrongfully. And he claims that he was allegedly beaten up to be forced into making a confession. So we'll look at some of the rules governing this today. Thank you everyone who has subscribed so far. If you do find these videos helpful and useful, please do subscribe. It does help to grow the channel. And just a reminder, we are primarily focusing some of the content on areas of the Blackstones syllabus for those studying the law. But these videos are aimed at also giving a good insight for the general audience about common and interesting areas of criminal law. So today we're looking at one of the most important topics in criminal evidence, and that's confessions. And under section 82, subsection 1 of PACE, a confession is any statement wholly or partly adverse to the person who made it. And that definition is deliberately wide. I will put in the comments the link to that article about the gentleman who was allegedly beaten up into a confession. But these confessions, they can include things said to the police, of course, but also things said to family, to friends, on social media, in texts, even in private conversations. So if the statement is adverse to the maker, it falls within the definition. Now, simply being a confession doesn't automatically make it admissible. Confessions are subject to two major safeguards. The first being section 76 of PACE, which deals with oppression and unreliability, and the second being section 78, which deals with fairness. And we're going to walk through both, and by the end you'll have a crystal clear understanding of when a confession can and cannot be used in a criminal trial. So next we move to one of the most examined areas for bar course students, and that's section 76, subsection 2. And this is a strict rule, and it's important to understand the wording. So under section 76, subsection 2, subsection A confession must be excluded if it was obtained through oppression. And that can include violence, inhuman or degrading treatment, as alleged by the gentleman in the article in the comments, or threats that overbear the will of the suspect. Under section 76, subsection 2, subsection B, a confession must also be excluded if it appears unreliable, and that unreliability stems from anything said or done by someone in authority. For example, failure to caution, denial of rest, improper pressure, intoxication, mental vulnerability. So a number of factors here. And I will signpost you to the 10 videos I did film showing the journey of a criminal case from arrest and charge all the way up to sentencing and appeal. If you do go back to chapter 2 in that series, arrest to charge, we look at some of these police powers and the rules governing police behaviour with regards to PACE. And just a reminder, it does fit in quite nicely here, because if any of these rules were contravened, that could put the confession in danger of being admissible. Crucially, the burden is on the prosecution, and the standard again is beyond reasonable doubt. If they cannot disprove oppression or unreliability to that high standard, the confession must be excluded, and the judge has no discretion in this. This is one of the strongest protections in criminal procedure, and one you must know inside out if you are studying this as part of your course. Now, there's a term that you should become familiar with in your studies, and that's voir dire, and this is a trial within a trial. So how does the court decide whether oppression or unreliability occurred? And that is through this trial within a trial. And the jury is sent out, and the judge hears evidence on the conditions of the confession. And that may include various things such as interview recordings, questioning techniques used by police, the conduct of the officers, the mental and physical state of the suspect, or any other breaches of PACE Code C. And again, refer back to that video. I'll put a link in the comments. Chapter 2 of the criminal litigation series of videos does touch upon this also. The judge and only the judge decides admissibility, and the prosecution must prove that the confession was not obtained through oppression or unreliability, again, beyond reasonable doubt. This mini-hearing is crucial. It prevents contaminated evidence from ever reaching a jury, protecting both fairness and the integrity of the justice system. Even beyond oppression, the courts examine whether the confession was truly voluntary, and a voluntary confession must be free from any threats, inducements, bargaining, intimidation, or subtle tactics that overbear the suspect's will. And PACE Code C contains the key safeguards, and these are right to legal advice, breaks, rest, food and hydration, proper interview recording, and also needs to be appropriate for adults, appropriate adults available for youths, and also mental health protections as well where it's deemed necessary. Where Code C is breached, the court may decide that the confession was not reliable, or even if it was reliable, admitting it would be unfair under Section 78 of PACE. So for bar course students, remember, Code C breaches do not automatically exclude a confession, but they often open the door to a powerful Section 78 argument. And just a reminder, the Section 78 is looking at the fairness for the defendant and in the interests of justice. What about co-accused then? So this slide can really challenge students, but let's break it down simply. A confession made by defendant A can sometimes be used against defendant B, and this is governed by Section 76A. And because A is not giving evidence against B, it also engages the hearsay rules under Section 114 of the Criminal Justice Act 2003. Just a reminder, we did make a separate video on hearsay. I'll put the link in the comments below if you wanted to look into that. But the court must ask, is the confession reliable? Is it being used to shift blame? Is there evidence of hostility between the defendants, and would admission be fair? And importantly for bar students, if defendant B wants to exclude A's confession, the burden is on B, and the standard is the balance of probabilities in this case. There's a lower standard than the prosecution faces under Section 76. These situations need careful balancing, and the courts approach them with extreme caution. So you can see it's not straightforward. So that was just a very brief look at confessions. I do recommend you go back and have a look at some of the links in the comments below of the other videos and the news article about the gentleman who was allegedly beaten to confess for murder. And to conclude, we reach the safety valve of criminal justice with Section 78 PACE. Even if a confession is admissible under Section 76, the court can still exclude it under Section 78 if admitting it would be an adverse effect on the fairness of proceedings. So just remember Section 78, the fairness of proceedings test. And fairness is the overriding test, really. This may apply where Code C was breached, the suspect was vulnerable, the interview conditions were improper, legal advice was denied or delayed. So there's a lot going on here, and I do recommend anyone who's studying the law to go back to their textbooks and do some further reading on this. This is just a snapshot. But the big picture is Section 82(1) tells us what a confession is. Section 76 protects against oppression and unreliability. Voir dire decides admissibility without the jury being present. Code C ensures voluntariness and proper treatment. And section 76A and hearsay govern co-accused confessions. And just remember, section 78 protects fairness when the process goes wrong. So hopefully you found that breakdown helpful. It was just a brief insight into confessions within the criminal law context. If you did have any questions, certainly drop a comment below. If you do have any requests for any further videos looking at an area of law, criminal law, then just drop it in the comments below. But thank you for watching. Hope to see you on the next video. So bye-bye for now. Take care.